Hello everybody and welcome to tonight's Digital Doorstep interview. My name is Trasa. I am an admin on the Savage Politics Facebook page, and tonight we will be interviewing Ciara Galvin. Ciara is a challenger candidate. She's new to the candidacy here in Savage, and well, I tell you, I'll allow her to introduce herself in a moment, but firstly, just to let you know a couple of things about the Digital Doorstep. We decided to do this because Savage does not have a hustings or a forum where the different candidates can debate, ask questions, answer questions, and take feedback from an audience of voters. So that's the reason that we decided to set this up. We have had two interviews so far on Monday and Tuesday. Ciara is the first challenger candidate that we will be interviewing, so it's very exciting. We're delighted to have her coming on board. So as we speak, Ciara will be joining in. I've issued an invite to Ciara to join us, but until she comes into our waiting room, and I'll just check if she's on her way. She is indeed on her way. So until Ciara joins us, we will just take a moment. I'll give you a little bit of information about what's been happening on the basis of the last two interviews. So we've had an absolutely massive response from people. It's been much bigger than we anticipated, given that this is the first for us. There have been over 1,000 views of our Digital Doorstep interviews on the last two nights. I'm sure that's set to grow over time as people watch them more. We have had over 130 questions and answers happening in the comments underneath those videos, which is also fantastic. So I'll be reminding everybody in a few moments, but just to say, please do pop your comments into the comments below, because all of the candidates, including Ciara, have agreed to address as many of the questions as they can on local issues in the comments after the video is shared, which happens right after we finish going live. So I see that Ciara is just trying to join us at the moment, so bear with me 1 second, and I'm just going to see if I can help her. 1 second there. Here we go. We may lose audio, so bear with us. Ah, fantastic. Hi, Ciara, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm good. I'm glad you could make it. I think that a bit of difficulty was on my own side, actually, because the invitation didn't appear to get sent to you. So my apologies for that.
All right. That's all right. I was
I'm
having
sure
a mild
you're
panic there.
Don't worry. Look, I'm thrilled that you're here. As I was just mentioning to everybody who's watching at home, and I'm not sure if you can see the stats, but we have a growing live audience at the moment. Again, this is fantastic. Absolutely thrilled to have you with us. I have introduced you extremely briefly, just to let everybody know that you're a new challenger candidate in Celbridge. The other interviews that we have done have been with incumbent candidates, so it's a little bit of a fresh spin on things, I guess, for this evening. So we'll get stuck in. Just to remind everybody at home, the format for the interview. First, I will ask Ciara to introduce herself to us. Then I will ask some questions, the first of which will be common to all of the other candidates. So the first question of the night is the same question that's asked of everybody. And then we'll get stuck into some subjects with Ciara. The purpose of this is to let you hear Ciara's responses. Ciara and the other candidates have seen the questions in advance. The idea here is that you'll get a feel for the candidate, I suppose, get to know Ciara a little bit better, and please put your questions to Ciara in the comments below. Don't be shy. If you haven't asked a question before, if you're watching this for the first time, everything's extremely friendly in the comments, so just whatever's on your mind. If it's a local issue, pop it in there, and Ciara and the other candidates have agreed to answer the questions that are under their video. So I should belt up. I've been on for long enough. Ciara, you're extremely welcome. Thrilled to have you on. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I would like to say is that this is my first live interview of any description.
Good for you.
So I'm a little bit nervous, and I did actually prepare some notes. So
That's okay.
I may refer to those a few times during the interview.
No problem.
So I suppose I had to check my own name there on my notes, but I'm Ciara Galvin. I'm running for the Labour Party in the local elections. I'm from Selbridge. I grew up here, and I recently bought a house. In fact, I bought the house next door to my parents. Um, so I'm committed to be here long term. Is what I'm saying, and I do intend to spend the rest of my life here. And I only recently turned 30, so there's a good chance that my life will be quite a long time. Um, so in terms of, Selbridge is a really nice place to live. It always has been. It's why I moved back here. It's why I want to raise my family here. There are some issues that we still have, and I suppose I do have a very strong vested interest in seeing those resolved, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be sitting in traffic for the next 50 years. So I suppose about myself, I'm currently on maternity leave. I have a 4-month-old daughter called Ava. She's in the next room with Eugene at the moment. So if you hear any crying, it's because it's nearly her bedtime. Sometimes gets a little bit upset. Yeah. So,
no problem.
but generally, when I'm not on maternity leave, I'm an advocate in the Workers' Rights Centre for SIPTU. So what that involves is I make representations on behalf of individual members who are having difficulties with their employers. And I also write and present submissions to the Workplace Relations Commission on employment law and on industrial relations issues sometimes as well. So what I'm saying is, although I'm not a counsellor yet, I do have quite a lot of experience in representing people through my work as a trade union official with SIPTU. I was previously an elected representative. I sat on Union Council when I was in Maynooth University. I sat on that for 2 years. I was also a member of Selbridge Community Council from 2008 and 2009. Now, the reason I actually got involved in that was because I was a young person at the time. I'm still, I don't know, 30 is kind of borderline young, but
you're still a young person, trust me.
I'm not as young as I was when I got involved on that anyway. And the reason I did that was because I knew when I was growing up here in Selbridge, there wasn't a whole lot for young people to do. And I kind of wanted to, I've seen my mother's watching. Hi, Dimphna, how are you? Sorry.
Hi, Dimphna.
So I knew I wanted to get involved to kind of fix that. So that was the main reason I joined the Selbridge Community Council, was actually to set up the Youth Cafe Committee. So we did that, and we did a consultation with young people, and that's still up and running 10 years later. Now, I can't really take any credit for the last 10 years because I was only involved at the start of the project, and fair play to the volunteers who keep that running. They do great work there. So I suppose it's a similar motivation for wanting to run for a local election. I know there are certain amenities that are missing in Selbridge that I would really like to see provided. They may not all be provided in the next 5 years, but certainly in the foreseeable future, there's a lot that I'd like to see. And as I said, I have in the past delivered the youth cafe, so I know I can do this. And I suppose I've also worked a number of different political jobs since my time before I worked for SIPTU. I've worked in the Dáil, I've worked in the Seanad, and I spent 15 months in Brussels working in the European Parliament. So I do have a lot of political experience as well. I have a degree in politics and a master's in public policy. So although I'm a first-time candidate for Kildare County Council, I do have substantial skills and experience that are transferable, and I will bring those with me to the role should I be elected on the 24th of May. How are we doing for time, Tressa? Do I have
we're doing absolutely fine. Yeah, if you got something else to go in there, let's go. Yeah.
So I thought I might say, if we had time, I thought I might talk about the kind of campaign I want to run. I know politics can be very bitter. It can be there's a lot of kind of petty bickering that goes on, and I've been trying to stay above that in this campaign. There's a couple of things I could raise, but I won't, because I want to focus on the positives, things that we can do at local level to kind of improve the quality of life for everyone who lives in Selbridge. I'm doing my best to run kind of an open and honest campaign with people on the doors. So if someone asks me a question and I can't help them with it because it's not a local issue, I will tell them that. And what I've been doing is I've been working with them at Stag, and I've been saying, look, that's a national issue. I'm happy to talk about it, about what I think about it, but the reality is that if you want that resolved, you're going to have to go to a national politician. So I have been working with Emmett on that. And then if I'm not certain of the answer, because as you said yourself, I'm the first person on this the digital doorstep who isn't a sitting councillor. So there are certain things that I don't know yet, that someone like Kevin Byrne, who I'm running to replace, who's been on the council for 17 years, I mean, it's just, you know, it just top of his head, he'll know the answer. So if there's a question, if someone asks me something and I think, oh, do you know what, rather than bullshit them, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask Kevin that, and then I'll get back to them with you know, the accurate information. So that's the kind of campaign I am running. And
I think it certainly sounds as though, it certainly sounds as though you're very, very well prepared in terms of, you know what you're facing in terms of the struggle, I suppose, to take a candidacy from its inception to May the 24th, when Ciara will be looking for your #1 vote, by the way, everybody. Yes. And if I've understood you well, you have a clear delineation between national and local issues. You know where those lines are, and where they're blurred, you've got a reference point between your colleagues that are obviously very well established in Celbridge.
Exactly. And I suppose what I'm saying, even in my leaflet, I probably should have had one to hand. What I'll do is I'll post it in the comments afterwards.
Do.
Yeah, so even on my leaflet, which a lot of people would have got, but there's still about 2,400 to go out. So some people watching won't have seen it yet. But I've kind of divided it into, so up the top is things that I can do as a councillor, and then underneath is things that I am interested in politically and I believe have an effect on the local communities, but aren't technically within the council's remit. So what I'm saying on those issues, and I suppose the big one would probably be the Garda station, is that I will continue to advocate on those issues, but I won't be able to resolve them on the council. It could be a case of me putting our case and representing our Celbridge's case to the relevant authorities and bodies on those. So again, that's the delineation between local and national.
Understood. Okay. Well, that's a great introduction for anybody who's tuned in the last minute or two, because I can see the figures of who's the numbers rather of who's tuned in. Ciara is coming on live. She's doing her first live interview for her very first candidacy. So if you've got a thumb free, hit that like button and give her a little bit of support. I think she's doing fantastic. I hope the nerves have eased off a little bit, Ciara. You certainly don't sound nervous one bit. So
oh, well, thanks.
So you don't. You're doing great. Let's move on to the questions. Now, we ran over time, by the way, on the last two interviews. So if we run over time tonight, it's okay. I'll cut us somewhere later on. So moving on to the common question, and this, everybody, is the question that is asked of all of our candidates. It often appeared, Ciara, that the municipal district councillors were at cross purposes with one another, and that Kildare County Council places many obstacles in the way of securing infrastructural and other funding for Celbridge. Is this a fair assessment in your view? What approaches will you take to fostering a more cohesive working environment among councillors and with Kildare County Council officials? And what will you do to maximise the share of funding that gets directed to Celbridge?
Yeah, okay. So this question, I noticed.
We appear to have lost Ciara temporarily there. Sorry about that, everybody. What I'm just going to do is invite Ciara back into the chat. Ciara, if you're watching and panicking because the connection is gone, don't worry, we'll figure this out.
Hi, sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. It just threw me off.
Happen.
Yeah, hopefully
that's the problem with live broadcasts. If it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
Don't be worrying about that.
Yeah,
so we were just finishing up on the end of the don't worry, we're all good now. Just finishing up on the end of the common question regarding if it's a fair assessment that there appear to be some cross purposes on the council, and what can you do to maximise the share of funding that Celbridge receives?
Yeah, so I was just saying before I got cut off there, I think there's a couple of different parts in this question. So I thought I might start with the cross purposes part, which I look, it's kind of the nature of politics that in Ireland anyway, that politics is adversarial, and there's different interests competing for the same resources, and sometimes that'll lead to conflict. And there's really there's no point pretending otherwise. But in terms of working across purposes for, infrastructural projects, for instance, where they would benefit the whole community. I really, what I want to do is I want to avoid kind of petty squabbles and, the pointless bickering that sometimes does go along with these things, and everyone rushing to claim credit for the same thing when everyone's actually contributed to it. That puts people off politics, and it's not something that I want to do. I can't promise I won't ever do it, but I'll do my best not to, So in terms of working with the others and not working at cross purposes, I'm fairly good at working with people, and I hope I can kind of lead a consensus among councillors in the common interest of Selbridge, certainly on the badly needed infrastructural projects, and thereby kind of presenting a common front to the county council officials. In terms of barriers that they throw up, again, I think that's probably something that a sitting councillor would be able to answer better. It's something that I might know. If you ask me again in 5 years' time, when hopefully I'll be a councillor, the same question, I'll be able to say, oh yeah, this or that, the next happened. I don't think that, from what I've heard from Kevin, it's not really a case that there's barriers thrown up as such. It's just that, sometimes the projects might get lost in the mix. They're slightly understaffed and that sort of thing, which isn't great on one level, but it happens. Everyone's human. So if I'm wrong, and if it's the case that they're actively trying to prevent everything that we're trying to do, then I'll certainly let you know, Tressa. But I don't think that's the case. So what was the other part? The maximising of the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know there's proposals for some major infrastructural projects in Selbridge, such as the bridge, the ring road, and also some of the schools. And in terms of maximising funding for those, I think one of the benefits of being a party candidate as opposed to an independent candidate is that you do have the support of your national colleagues. And if the funding isn't being provided, then you have some recourse where you can put in, you can go to the minister with your party colleagues, or you can have them submit parliamentary questions on your behalf to find out what the story is and where the funding is. And what I'll do anyway is I'll argue at local and national level for these funding for these really quite essential projects that need to happen for the benefit of Selbridge. And I'll argue for that through my party colleagues in the Dáil, and also with any of the other candidates for the Labour Party who were elected to Kildare County Council. And I suppose I'll bang on a few tables if I have to, metaphorically, but perhaps also literally if the funding for these isn't coming through. And that's going to be my approach to maximising the funding.
Fantastic. So we'll move on, we'll keep moving, and the next subject for us all to talk about is cycling and our cycling infrastructure. It's because Selbridge is so beautiful, and we have natural amenities on our doorstep. It is a very popular sport, or a functional mode of transport, depending on the way you look at it. A lot of people cycle for pleasure, and you support an extensive cycling network in Selbridge to help address traffic congestion and encourage this green mode of transport. However, there are no bike lockers at Hazelhatch train station, and we have seen a number of thefts there. Connecting cyclists to public transport would be one way to encourage people to get on their bikes. But what routes would you prioritise for improvement in Selbridge, and what are your plans for facilities to ensure secure ways of switching from bike to bus or from bike to train, so that there is a better door-to-door solution? How easy is this to achieve?
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll start by saying, yeah, I do support an improved cycling network in Selbridge. I cycled to university in Maynooth from Selbridge every day when I was in university there, so for 3 years. So I know that the cycle lanes are good, but they could do with some improvement, certainly on that route. I also think we also need to face the fact that, I heard today that the government is going to have to spend 150 million buying carbon credits, because we've completely missed our targets to reduce carbon emissions, and that's only going to increase in future years. So we have to kind of face the fact that if we are serious about reducing our carbon emissions and about tackling climate change, then we will have to look at alternative modes of transport besides cars. And bicycles are one of those, but I'm also going to be very keen on promoting other forms of active travel like walking. That's the main one. So I think in terms of making it easier to do that, you asked about bike lockers. Sorry, I just need to refer to my notes there.
It's
You asked
okay.
about
Yeah.
bike lockers. Yeah, I was up at Hazel Hatch train station there recently, and they're better than a lot of places because the bike stands there are covered, in that they have like a kind of a
Canopy.
plasticky
Yeah.
roof.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose, well, the way I combat not having my bike stolen is to buy like a cheap bike that I don't mind if they get stolen. But obviously that's not a great solution.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've been at the Newth train station, but
I have. Yeah.
so they have secure bike lockers there, and I think particularly for the transition from bike to train, that's what we need in Hazel Hatch, and it's really just going to be a case of finding out where to put them and then putting them there. So that'll be fairly easy to achieve, I think. In terms of going from a bike to bus, that's a slightly more complicated one, and I had to have a think about that one. I suppose the fact of the matter is that Kildare County Council operates the parking on the main street in Selbridge and also in Selbridge Abbey. And the other car parks on Selbridge Main Street, they're all privately owned. So what I was thinking was, I mean, if we want to put bike lockers there, and that would seem like the reasonable solution to not having a lack of secure bike storage facilities, would to be put bike lockers or other secure, maybe a cage with the the lock or whatever.
Sure.
So it would be a case of putting that taking out maybe a few of the parking spaces and putting it there. Or if we didn't want to do that, sitting down, arranging meetings with the owners of the private car parks in Selbridge and looking to install, secure bike parking things there. Again, that's not going to be too difficult to achieve. In terms of the routes, which routes I would prioritise, my priority would have to be to schools and to the train station. And how I understand that works is that I would work on the exact routing with the area engineer. So the councillors my understanding of that relationship is that the councillors set the agenda, they write the policy, and then they work with the area engineer to establish like exactly, for example, exactly where the cycle route would go. But yeah, absolutely, my priority would be the schools, because I think it should be possible for a 10-year-old child to cycle to their school without fear for their safety. And that's kind of my target. And then of course to the train as well, that would be great. In terms of, is it easy to achieve? I suppose almost nothing is easily achieved in terms of road infrastructure, but where there's a will, there's a way. And if the political will is there, it can get done. And if I'm elected, it will get done.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay. We might hold you to that.
Yeah,
Let's hope so.
please.
I will. I will. So just a quick recap of what's coming in on the comments, and a reminder to everybody watching, we've got a great and growing audience here. We have got comments regarding water. We have comments regarding, where did I jot them down? Beg your pardon. We have a question rather, regarding safe zones in the aftermath of the 8th Amendment result, and what we need to do around safe zones. Another question has come in. I think that one I can't recall the name of the commenter. Sorry guys, they fly by me so fast. We have a question from Linda, or Lida, about the prevalence of anti-traveller sentiment in online forums, and I guess generally the general prevalence of anti-traveller sentiment. So those are the kinds of issues that are coming up. We have a question here. A former Labour voter who felt let down over the water issue. That's one to address. So a lot of different things, and I can tell you from watching the comments coming, and keep them coming, everybody. Please go for it. It's a great opportunity to ask to hear an answer from a fresh voice. So Ciara's game if you are. So don't be shy, hit like and throw your questions in. We've had questions, Ciara, about SNA, special needs supports in general, the 67, local property tax allocations, crime, of course. the subjects that we all know, anybody who's kind of online at the weekend flicking around to see who's talking about what, it's really the usual suspects. I suppose what stands out to me, and I'd like to thank the people watching for bringing the new subjects in, would be the question around safe zones. For me personally, and this is possibly a reflection on me more than anything else, is a newer subject. I'm seeing it anew in the last couple of weeks. So that seems to be bubbling up. And then the anti-traveller sentiment, I've seen questions on that a couple of times now throughout a couple of the interviews. So there's a flavour of what's in the comments. It's all sitting there waiting for you for later on. I won't ask you to address any of those now.
No, that's
but
okay.
What I'll do is.
Well, sorry, just what I was going to say on those is I haven't actually, I've been out canvassing all day and I haven't had dinner yet. And I do need to put the baby to bed. So I probably won't get around to those this evening, but I will get to them over the next few days, including the disillusioned baby.
That's okay. There's plenty of time. I mean, there's plenty of time between now and May 24th. And I think everybody, myself included, understands that this week we have been interviewing the busiest set of people in Selbridge. So I know you're up against it, and don't worry, and people will understand. So we'll move on. The next subject, the reason it's coming up a second time, this subject has come up previously in another interview. The reason it's coming up a second time is because people care about it so much. It's the bridge. So I say it's almost a curse word now, isn't it? The bridge. As soon as somebody mentions it, everybody goes off. A second bridge has been pursued vigorously for years now. It has also been a priority in previous local elections. Various studies have been planned. Meanwhile, housing development is ongoing at an alarming rate relative to the provision of traffic relief measures. It appears our councillors have been making progress, in fact, and progress definitely is being made. I was able to confirm that last night. But Selbridge, on the whole, over many, many years, not just the last 5 years, we've been unable to effectively influence the project to get it to completion, to bring it over the line, to give people back some hope. And that's really the context for the question. So my question is, how do you propose that any further delays are addressed? And will you work with our team of councillors to ensure that one loud message is sent to Kildare County Council?
Yeah, I just made a note there because I realised I had forgotten to address something in my previous notes. I actually watched Ida Cousin's interview last night, so I did see her.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I know I want to know who to give my second preference to as well. So I'll be watching them all. So I thought her answer on the second bridge was fairly comprehensive in terms of where we are. As far as I know, there's been 400. But just in case anyone wasn't watching it, I suppose there's been 400,000 allocated to a consultant engineer to identify locations, and they will narrow them down and they'll present those locations to the public and to the council in the next couple of years. So that's where that's at the moment. In terms of the delay, I honestly don't know why it's been delayed up until now. It's kind of, I know there was that plan and there was something like 11 million set aside for it in a good few years ago to go down by Castletown, but then there were serious objections to that, and the plan seemed to just kind of fall by the wayside. So in terms of the current process and how we might address delays in that, I think we probably have to wait for the consultant engineer's report. That's the first thing. And there's nothing that you can do to expedite that. It's just a case of waiting. And of course, this is, and we're never going to get a third bridge. Well, probably shouldn't say never. We're probably never going to get a third bridge over the Liffey and Selbridge. So it is important that it goes in the right place. And I think the first potential delay I foresee with this after the report is delivered is that there will be objections to the site of the bridge. I can't imagine anywhere in Selbridge that would not raise some objections for the bridge. So I suppose it'll be a case of trying to move the public consultation along as swiftly as we can without leaving people behind. So without making people feel like we haven't been heard. And then I suppose the next potential delay that I could foresee would be if the funding wasn't applied for. So that I'm not just saying that. I was reading in the Liffey Champion this week that they actually missed the deadline to apply for funding for the swimming pool that's meant to be happening in Maynooth University.
I
So
saw that.
yes,
Yeah.
so apparently there's form and that sort of thing, and it'll be the councillor's role is really to keep the pressure on, and to make sure that kind of thing just does not. We can't. We need this bridge. We can't afford for people to mess up and miss a deadline for funding. That kind of thing.
Okay, I
Um,
do.
yeah, so that's the kind of thing, and I'll keep raising it, and I'll keep the pressure on until we do have a bridge. I suppose I'll keep raising the issue with my party colleagues nationally, um, to secure that funding, and I suppose that's how and I will of course work with the other councillors as well, not just my party colleagues.
Brilliant,
Um,
brilliant. Yeah,
I'll-
I think the sense is, and I have to say, I'm under no impression that it hasn't been happening. I think there's been a chorus to date on the bridge. I think it's a common issue, and people feel very strongly that it needs to happen. And the
yeah.
house, like you were saying, the location, the precise details are all up for debate. But I know that pressure has been put on, and it's a credit that we are where we are in a way. And I know that sounds strange, but we have gotten to a certain stage at the moment. It's a case of getting it over the line and making sure, as you said, for example, that no mishap of possible under-resourcing in Kildare County Council, which I believe is a real issue, or human error, for example, if that was involved, I don't know, would get in the way of it. So
Yeah.
it's good to know that you're ready to clear your throat and holler at them over it, because I really think we all need it. We're going to run long on time if I don't push along. So very briefly, if you
Okay,
could, on this
no
last
problem.
question.
Yeah.
It's about childcare and schools. Families
Yes.
nationwide are under immense pressure with the cost and availability of childcare and good school facilities. And by the way, I realise this is a national issue with a local
That's okay. Yeah.
piece, but it's relevant because people in Selbridge are suffering just like everyone else. This is one of the issues you would like to pursue at local level. And as a
Yeah.
new parent yourself, you have said you would like to make politics more family friendly. And when I read that, it intrigued me. What is family friendly politics? Can you give us a picture of the current childcare and school services landscape in Selbridge? What can we do to improve quality, access and costs? Briefly, if you
Okay.
could.
Yeah, no problem. In terms of family-friendly politics, I suppose that's on two levels. The first level is kind of having more family-friendly events in Selbridge, so community events and also political education, but in a fun way. So maybe something around the bees and that kind of thing. And then I suppose the other way that politics needs to be made more family-friendly is to make it easier for parents, specifically women with young children, to get involved. We're an entire demographic that's more or less missing from the political landscape in Ireland, actually not just in Kildare, and it's really important that we're heard as well. So I suppose that's the two ways that I'd like to see politics made more family friendly. So perhaps not
Okay.
as interesting, as intriguing as you thought it was going to be.
It's exactly as intriguing as I thought, because you've captured the entire spectrum of things. You've captured the services that impact families and female involvement, and you've mentioned the demographics, which is clearly a problem. So yeah, no, that's bang on. And so the other part of the question was about the
Childcare.
childcare and school services landscape. Yeah, what can we do there?
Yeah. So I suppose I'm much more familiar with the childcare side of it because that's an area I worked on before I became an advocate in the Workers' Rights Centre. I was an organiser for SIP2 on the Big Start campaign, which
Oh,
is it was their campaign SIP2's campaign to unionise the childcare and early years educators. Um, so, as you said, this is a national issue. The only way that I'll start with the problems. Childcare is obviously very expensive. We all know that. Early years educators are increasingly qualified, but they are not paid to match those qualifications. As a result, there's quite a high turnover of early years educators, and they're being poached by other countries because they know we have good quality early years educators and childcare
yeah.
staff, and they're paying them more money. So as a result, there's a decline. There's quite services are finding it hard to stay open because they can't make the profits and they're losing the staff.
Mm-hmm.
So that affects the availability of childcare. So there's a couple of things we can do. The first thing is, of course, I don't think there has been a motion in Kildare County Council supporting the Big Start campaign, but that's one of the things I'd like to bring. It makes a difference in that it kind of builds the confidence and the lobbying skills of early years educators so that they can take that to the government and take it to national politicians. And it also shows national politicians that the interest is there for this and that the votes are there for this. And that's one way that hopefully we can increase the investment of, it needs to be increased to 1% of GDP. And currently it's 0.1% of GDP is how much we invest in the early years sector. So that's kind of one small thing I'd like to do as a councillor. The other thing is there's actually a law, I think it's the Planning Act, it's sometime in the early 90s, maybe might be 1990, that builders have to build one childcare facility for 20 children for every 75 houses that they build. So I don't think that's being enforced at the moment. So that's something that we should be looking to enforce at council level to make sure that these plans have childcare facilities in them and that those childcare facilities are used. And that should increase availability. And it should, you know, in combination with the increased investment, that should decrease the cost for parents, and it should increase the wages for people who work really hard in the sector and just don't get the remuneration that they deserve. I suppose very briefly on the schools, I'll just do one. I'll focus on the development. One of the things that's very obvious we need in Celbridge is a permanent location for CCS and for St Patrick's National School on this side of the bridge. So I'm in the Grove at the moment, and there's no secondary school on this side of the bridge. So that's one of the things we need to address as fast as we can. I'm told they're almost at agreement for buying a site for those two schools and also for the new Rayfield Special School. It'll be a case of keeping on the pressure and making sure that we get the funding for those. Because you know those prefabs that the first two schools I mentioned are in, they're coming to the end of their lifespan, and it's just not acceptable that we still have children in prefabs in this day and age. So I hope that kind of. And look, if anyone has any more specific questions they'd like to ask me, please leave them in the comments below. Or if there's a personal question, you know, maybe about they can't get a school place or something and they want me to look into that, they're more than welcome to send a private message to my page if it's not something that they want to post publicly.
Fantastic. And Ciara, will you share your page in the comments so that people can see it and they'll have a way to reach out as well? I have seen, because I've been trying to get to know the candidates, particularly the challenger candidates who I don't know very well myself, over time, and I've been watching the conversations and you know, not engaging in most of them, but I have seen Ciara respond to a lot of questions and with a lot of fun and tongue-in-cheekery and a few fantastic responses went out there as well. And I have to say, to answer questions and to address people seriously in such good nature and to really zero in on the point of the question and get it answered, it's a skill that's it's not given enough recognition. I think you do very well with that, and I also think you've answered the questions this evening very well. For everybody who's still watching, everybody is still watching and more. The numbers have crept up. Ciara is a challenger candidate. She's here for the first time. She's putting it all out on the line for everybody, and she's giving up her time to answer questions and let you know her approach. So hit that like button, stick a comment down. Ciara, I don't know if you can see the comments that have come in. Here's a few likes coming in. Thanks very much. It does mean a lot, guys. Comments have come in, and I'm not sure if they're on your screen, but they're on mine. People saying well done, people saying fair play to you, that they're enjoying the interview. So I think you've done an absolutely fantastic job. Thank you for coming on. I understand it must have been nerve-wracking if it's your first one. I can tell you, I felt like that on Monday when I did my first one with Brendan, except I was in charge, so it was nearly worse. So listen, thanks a million. I'm going to wrap it up here. So for everybody at home, keep the questions coming. Ciara is available. She's going to be running around like a headless chicken for the next however many days we have left. She's looking for your #1 vote on May the 24th. So keep it coming. Let's get at it in the comments and let's stay engaged. Ciara, I hope you have a lovely evening. I hope we haven't kept the baby up too late. And per Eugene.
Yeah, I heard her cry once or twice.
They'll cope. Oh, did you? Okay, okay. Well, look, we'll leave you to it. And thanks again, everybody, for watching, and see you tomorrow night.
Thanks very much, Tressa. Bye now.
Thanks a million. Take care. Bye.